Look up, look down, look out. Here come the monkeys.
Mickey,
David,
Mike,
Peter.
We're talking about them in Monkeying Around. That's right, Monkeying Around has everything, including
interviews,
Episode reviews.
album discussions,
and other incredible surprises.
Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys.
Welcome back to Monkeying Around. Now, Veronica and Elaine have the night off this week, but we're in for a special treat. We are joined by representatives of some of our sister shows on the ESO network. Joining us from the BATCHUMS podcast, Commissioner Mike Gordon. Welcome back to the show, Mike.
Howdy.
Commissioner Gordon.
And my co-host from the Earth Station Trek podcast, Keith Johnson.
Like sands through the hourglass. These are the days of my life.
Oh, my God.
And Alan Seiler.
Well, I didn't think of a funny quote, so I'll just say, I'll do Veronica and I'll go, hi.
And yeah, as we're coming up on the 60th anniversary of the debut of the Monkees and also the debut of Star Trek. And we've just passed this year, the 60th anniversary of the debut of Batman. And it was occurring to me that, I mean, the 1966-67 television season was a huge television season. It was hugely influential and is a big change for television. And so I thought it'd be fun to do sort of our, like they used to do the preview of the upcoming season, but in our case, it's going to be with 60 years of hindsight, just looking at that season of television, the shows that debuted that year, but also the returning favorites that some of them got a makeover for 66, 67. And I mean, and the group of us here, I mean, I don't know how many hours we've spent talking about TV shows that debuted in 1966 between Batman, Star Trek, and the Monkees. Quite a few.
Hey, Charles, let me just say, I've never, ever thought about this before. You do two podcasts, one about the Monkees and one about Star Trek. And that's two shows that literally debuted within days of each other.
I know.
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was a wild time for television.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you guys joining us. And this is, I know, part of the biggest crossover we've done with ESO shows on this podcast so far. But it's great. I mean, and Mike, I mean, starting with you. I mean, you talk about Batman 66. You guys on the BATCHUMS have gone through every episode of Batman 66.
Right.
So you got a little bit of a head start on us on the 60th anniversary deal, right? Because Batman debuted in January.
Yeah, Batman, like, look, no offense to any other show, but 66 was the year of Batman.
Mm-hmm.
It debuted on January 12th, the season one, because it was a mid-season replacement.
Yeah.
The season one ended in May. The movie premiered in July, and the second season started September 7th. So we're talking like Batman was around all year round.
Wait, the
1966.
movie? When did the movie premiere, you said?
And July 30th, 1966.
The one with all the evil people on it? That movie?
The one with the bomb?
The one where he's carrying the bomb? Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that premiered the same year. Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
they greenlit everything, and because Batmania was a thing.
Right.
Yeah. So unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, I mean, I was born in 68, so I was born after the hype. After the show was canceled, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Although the show was still on while I was being conceived. So
Those two things aren't related, are they?
No, I don't. You know what? I'm even sorry I brought that up. Let's think about that the better. But yeah, and of course, I didn't get to watch it until it was in syndication, just like a lot of these shows. And
right.
But I have found that I have strong ties to, I think, this decade of television more than any other decade that's ever been. You know, the list of shows that are influential to me that were on or premiered in the 60s, from The Twilight Zone to Alfred Hitchcock to, as Alan can point out, Doctor Who, or to, The Addams Family, Get Smart, Honey West, the Monkees are among them too. Star Trek, of course. Like, there's just, and that's just like a small fraction of the shows that were going on in the 60s, and not a lot of them made it to the 70s. Not very many at all. Like, we're talking about like big shows, but by the 70s, you almost get a reset of almost the entire landscape of television. Yeah, Batman was a phenomenon in 66. It was a candle that burned itself out pretty quickly, because by 68 it was gone. But man, 66 was all about it. I mean, I think they don't call it Batman 66 for nothing.
Yeah, and Batman had a huge impact on the pop culture and the look of television.
Right.
And even a lot of shows that debuted like in 65, like Lost in Space, Bewitched, things like that. The 66 years when everything went color. And I mean, a lot of those things we talk about on the show a lot, that how much music changes year to year in the 60s, right? Because culture was just evolving that rapidly. And I think television, you really can't tell the difference between a 1966 show and say a 65 show even, and especially a 64 show.
Agreed.
I think the addition or the advent of affordable color TVs was a big influence on the networks to greenlight more fantasy-based type shows.
Right.
Even, you know, we're talking about Batman and Star Trek for geeky stuff, but even the sort of sitcoms like Bewitched and Gilligan's Island and I Dream of Jeannie, very, very colorful and fantastic.
Right.
Yeah. I'm older than you, Mike. And I remember when we had a black and white television, like so many. And Charles, you mentioned you got a really, really old black and white television, right? You still have. And was it black and white or color?
No, actually, yeah. The old television I have is color.
Color. Okay.
But growing up, we did have, my grandma had an old like portable black and white television that I used to watch sometimes, back when you could still turn it on.
Yeah, and I remember we had like a 12-inch screen black and white TV with the old school UHF loop antenna. Then we had a black and white TV. I remember my dad buying a color television, and it was the most exciting thing on the planet, bringing a color TV home. And to what you're saying about the color, when shows like Lost in Space, for example, they went super vibrant. All the shows found one of the reasons Star Trek is so colorful, because TV was trying to compete with the movies. I mean, the movies were trying to compete with TV. It's why you had Technicolor in the theaters and CinemaScope. And so they kept going back and forth, competing with each other. And one of the reasons Star Trek was so vibrant, and for some reason, all the crew of Lost in Space had really kind of hip and mod and colorful uniforms in like their third season. It was taking advantage of color television. And it was so wild just to watch all that. I remember that, and Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea and all the shows. Bewitched. Like you were talking about, Bewitched started out in black and white, went color. I think Gilligan's Island started out black and white and went color. And it was quite a transition to see that stuff take place back then.
Yeah, definitely. I want to grab a few comments real quick.
Right.
We got some vocal folks in the comments.
Hey, welcome.
Always.
Howdy.
Wendy Borite says, so many shows, I can't choose just one.
Amen, Wendy. Wow.
Robert Thomason said, hey, this one should be fun. And holy 1966 Batman. Tony Bauer said, all these shows made their debut in the fall of 66, and so did I. Robert Thomason said, until HDTV, I never noticed Cesar Romero had the mustache buried under the white Joker makeup.
That's great. That's true.
And said, those Batman building climbs with special guests was always fun to watch.
Right.
Wendy Borite said, I've seen all the 1970s Batman, including the movie of Batman with Adam West. Yeah, and that was the 1966 when you were talking about. And that was, pretty amazing for a TV show they debuted in January. They had a movie out that summer. Batman was firing on all cylinders. And then you can really see the effect of Batman on shows like Lost in Space and even to an extent Star Trek as it went along. I mean, the embracing of like the pop art style and just camp really permeated TV.
Yeah, and it is very hard to replicate. Even the producers of Batman tried to replicate it, because in '66 we see the debut of Green Hornet,
right?
And
that music
it is by the same people, and it has that kind of similar look, but they kind of didn't get the memo about the camp, so it just kind of fell flat. People were kind of expecting one thing, got another. I mean, I love the Green Hornet series for what it is, but people were expecting something else at that point, I think.
Well, and Bruce Lee definitely didn't want to do camp. As a matter of fact, back in Hong Kong, they renamed it to think it was something like the Cato and Green Hornet show. They actually changed the name. But to your point, it had that kind of funky music. And I know Alan remembers this. You guys are talking about that aesthetic. Remember the episode where they went to what they thought was Alpha Centauri? It was that weird planet where there was a bunch of young people who couldn't age. And dude, they were doing that straight up, that kind of dance, and they were playing the funky music. It was straight up 60s music. So they were really embracing that aesthetic back then. Yeah,
totally. And I mean, let's look at some of the shows that debuted that year and that fall. I mean, we talk about the Monkees on the show a lot, and we've been going episode by episode through the Monkees, but I mean, we talk about Star Trek a lot over at Earth Station Trek.
That's our job.
And I mean, Star Trek was a big departure from the sci-fi shows that had come out previously. Right. In style and tone. And I mean, what do you think about the fact that it debuted that year and it was on the heels of, Batman having the effect on the culture? I mean, what do you think Star Trek brought to 1966 television?
I want to say quickly before we answer that question, when you talk about the difference between Star Trek and previous shows, also debuting this same TV series is a show called The Invaders. Another sci-fi show, which is very much a holdover from that sort of 1950s, that whole like the enemy within kind of thing that so many of the 1950s sci-fi movies were doing. And along comes Star Trek at the same time as The Invaders, and it's a stark difference between the two.
And jump on that real quickly, because that's one of my favorite shows. The main actor ended up, I think, on the X-Files decades later, because that kind of paranoia, that hiding the secret that you're trying to prove to the world, that absolutely was one of the influences on what the X-Files became 30 years later from The Invaders. Such a great show.
Yeah, The Invaders was creepy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think one thing I know, Charles, you're talking about Star Trek is and before then you'd had science fiction, but there were always like the kind of the rocket ships that look like a bullet or a projectile, and sometimes the robots and stuff are kind of goofy, and sometimes it's a little bit on the camp side. And I think one thing that Star Trek brought was they 100% committed to a serious sci-fi show, and not just a movie, because that's sometime around there you're going to start getting stuff like Forbidden Planet earlier and The Day the Earth Stood Still. You had serious movies that were sci-fi. But for a TV series to commit a budget and writing and actors to an incredibly serious weekly sci-fi show was an incredible experiment, which obviously failed after 3 years. But it literally brought in a whole generation of people who were hungry for something maybe they didn't know, which was serious, dramatic sci-fi on television. And you can see how the experiment could have failed by looking at all the products of Irwin Allen. I think every one of which we love, but they all went camp. Every one of them went camp. Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, Lost in Space, even Time Tunnel. Before it was over, everybody had the silver-faced aliens. There was a leprechaun in Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. Star Trek managed to hold that line, and it birthed a whole generation of scientists and engineers and writers and authors because of what it did. It's amazing.
That's a very good point.
The Time Tunnel is a really interesting case because it made that arc so quickly. That one season, they start off and it's like, Abraham Lincoln's being assassinated. We're visiting the Titanic. And by the end, it's like, you're right. Like the silver guys from space, you know what I mean? Like, and within the space of a television season, that show transformed.
Right. And,
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Alan, because I know you know about those
shows. I was going to talk about another show which I think made its debut on American television this year, and that's The Avengers. It's a British show which did start out very different. It started out as a black and white, very serious show, and by the time ABC picks it up from whatever British network was showing it, it had gone into the slightly more camp, but certainly the more fanciful kind of storytelling.
Right.
And it's very much a James Bond kind of show, but with all these really interesting, almost Twilight Zone kind of plot lines on top of it. And it gets a little, I wouldn't say campy, but it's really leaning toward camp as it goes farther down the line. And so that one makes its debut this year on American television. So that's yet another sci-fi-ish, this one is sci-fi-ish show that really shows that sort of that same kind of progression.
That's true.
Yeah, the big influence on that. And the Avengers kind of predates it, as does about the same time in Britain, The Saint starts up in 1962.
Yes.
And of course that's being shown. But yeah, with the success of Dr. No in 1962, James Bond mania takes over, and then we get a flood of shows that are, Man from U.N.C.L.E. and Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
And Girl from U.N.C.L.E., I Spy, and all of that. So we get tons of spy shows. Get Smart.
And Get Smart. Don't forget.
Oh
Get Smart.
gosh.
I would never forget Get Smart.
Woo, what a classic.
It is one of my top shows, and one of the rare ones that actually makes it into the 70s. Actually.
Right.
Barely, but it holds on. It has to switch networks, but it holds on. So there's a huge influence as well. But I think to your point, Charles, and what we talked about, Keith talked about this too. TV and movies are competing against each other.
Yeah.
So the movies are trying to be bigger, more colorful, more fanciful, more fantastic. TV's trying to say, hey, we're going to bring a little sliver of movies to you. So we're going to make things more fantastic, more colorful. The other thing about it is, too, we want to make programming that the whole family can enjoy.
Right.
So it's all about family programming, things that everybody can watch. Sure, there's some shows that are targeted more towards, adults, but most of the stuff that we're talking about is also stuff that the whole family can watch.
But that was the expectation. That was what television was expected to do. You didn't get things that were very boundary pushing and challenging to the norm. Basically, television was expected to entertain the family. So everything basically was made, and even things like the Smothers Brothers, which as a comedy show did push a little bit, but not like later shows did. Certainly not like Saturday Night Live did when it debuted, and some other things. Even the Sonny and Cher show was a little more daring than the Smothers Brothers. So that was TV's role basically.
And the last half of the 60s, like I think the year after what we're talking about here is when Laugh-In starts, and that's pretty big. That's pretty influential as far as sketch comedy goes.
And there was another one called Love American Style. I don't know when that started, but I'm sure it was later than this.
Love American Style. I remember that one.
That's why we got Happy Days.
Yeah, absolutely. The Happy Days came from. I used to watch Love American Style. I remember that show. I think it's very interesting what y'all are talking about with the 60s, especially late 60s being a time of transition, because I remember a show that debuted in 66. I used to watch it. It was called The Family Affair with Brian Keith.
My gosh.
It was a wholesome little show. He played Uncle Bill. Sebastian Cabot was Mr. French. The guy from Sigmund and the Sea Monster played was Jodie and Buffy. But at the same time, also coming out around that time was That Girl, which was for the time a little radical because
it was.
I was reading up on it. Marla Thomas had to fight because they wanted her to be married to that guy Donald and her boyfriend Donald. And by the series finale, the network said, y'all need to get married. And Marla Thomas said, no, we're not getting married. That was almost scandalous back in the day. And the fact that she was a single woman in an urban environment who lived by herself, who had a job, who wasn't trying to get a man, who wasn't a widow, was what led into another show that was kind of radical, which was the Mary Tyler Moore Show. It comes directly from that. And that helped it bring in the whole things we're talking about with the 70s, because now you got All in the Family and Good Times and all the stuff that came. So you can see the last gasp with that kind of innocent family show in the 60s. And then what became later, and I don't know if y'all know about this, there was a thing CBS did, because during that time you had the Beverly Hillbillies, you had Green Acres, you had Petticoat Junction, and you had all these things. Even though all those shows were still doing well, by the 70s they were all gone because CBS consciously wanted to reach an urban audience. And so they canceled all those shows in what was called the Rural Purge. It was kind of another last gasp of that. My Three Sons was still going on in 1966. And so all those kind of completely innocent anodyne shows kind of went out. And 10 years later, you've got All in the Family, which of course leads on. Then you get MASH and all the other kind of stuff. It's a real mixture that decade.
Keith, you must have been reading my notes
Because
because you said everything that I was planning to say about that girl.
I love that show. Did you watch it back in the day?
Okay, well let me put this into context a little bit, because 1966, I was born in 62, in November of 62. So I was not 4 years old yet when this season debuted. So I remember seeing many of these shows, and I know that I saw them when I was very young, but I'm sure I didn't see them when I was 3.5 years old.
Right.
So some of them had to be like later seasons or reruns and things like that. Yeah. Yes, I did watch That Girl, and yes, it was that first wave of almost like the women's lib movement on television. Yep. And you are absolutely right about the push to she should be married. No, my character is not going to be married. And what a radical thing that was. I mean, this is coming from a television landscape. If you remember back, not too far before this, the Dick Van Dyke Show. Yes, he and his wife were married but had to sleep in separate beds.
Right? Yes.
And so now we have a woman who is dating, who you can it's never said, but you can infer is having a sexual relationship with her unmarried partner, right? And is an independent human being, and that is such a thing, and that led to the Mary Tyler Moore Show and all these other things, exactly like you were saying.
Yeah, it's such a good show.
Yep, 66 was a big time, but Family Affair. I mean, the thing that really surprised me when I was looking over the schedule for 1966 was that it came on at 9:30. This is very much a family show. This is very much it was about a rich bachelor who has a manservant and is very much the playa on the scene, and then has to take custody of his 3 nieces and nephews because his brother and his wife are killed in a car wreck or whatever. Right. So he's got this teenage girl and these 2 very young twins, Buffy and Jody. And I remember loving that show when I was very little, but I could not have seen it first run because 9:30 was well past my bedtime when I was 3.5 years old.
Alan, you said something that I thought was very interesting, because I don't know if this applies anymore to people who are like 20 and stuff as it did to us. Every one of us, like, I'm the same as you. I wasn't old enough to watch any of the shows we're talking about live, but I know almost every one of them. Yeah. Why? Because back in the day, we had 3 VHF channels and 2 local, like 3. I had ABC, CBS, and NBC back in Dallas, Fort Worth. And then I had an independent station, Channel 11. Then we had, back in the day, 1 or 2 UHF channels. So I grew up, I had 6 channels.
Yeah, and I know.
How can I still quote Gilligan's Island and Get Smart and A Family Affair? Because that's all we did. We watched them over over and over and over. And I don't know if that will ever happen in television again. You know, Nickelodeon. That's why we know these shows so well. Because I'm like you, I watched That Girl in reruns, but I know it intimately. If every other show on this list, the same thing. I watched every one in reruns so many times I can't count.
Yeah.
I have a comment here. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
No, absolutely. Go ahead.
A comment here for Robert Thomason that I think speaks a lot to sort of the shift in television in 66 that I want to get your reaction to. He says, a real shame Lost in Space went camp.
Yeah.
The first season was amazing.
Absolutely.
I agree, but I also don't agree because it did get really silly in seasons 2 and 3, and the emphasis shifted from the adult cast to Dr. Smith is an adult, but he really isn't, to Dr. Smith and Will and the robot. But there were still some incredible storytelling in seasons 2 and 3. Most of it was camp, yes, but there were still some episodes that I would put up against most any other science fiction television storytelling then or now as being really, really excellent television.
You're probably thinking of the Antimatter Man, which
that's
is
one of them.
Oh, that's right. That's a classic.
Love it. And Flight to the Future, the one where Will and of course Will and Dr. Smith or whatever end up on a planet. They end up where they think they're in the future, because it was. I haven't seen it in a long time, but then season 1 has things like Mr. Nobody, which is one of the classic television episodes ever.
Yeah, The Keeper. There's so
beautiful.
many different things. The Keeper starring Michael Rennie was in a 2-part episode in Lost in Space.
Right, and you say that season 1 is more serious, but that kind of gets toward a little campy.
Yeah,
so it's already sort of edging its way toward that. Much more so once it does make that shift into color, but still,
Yeah.
And I do like the more serious early Lost in Space episodes.
Yeah.
But I mean, when I was a kid, I mean, what brought me into Lost in Space was Will, Dr. Smith, and the robot.
Come on, of course it is. Of course.
Yeah.
I always said, I've said this on our I've never said it on Monkeying Around before, but on our show, I have said that the reason that I didn't get into Star Trek as much when I was very little, but I did into Lost in Space, is because Lost in Space had 2 things Star Trek did not have. It had a boy the same age as me who was out having space adventures on other planets, and it had a robot. And that's 2 things that I was seriously into, man. When I was a little tyke, outer space adventures and robots.
Yeah, I've never known if I've been unusual that way. Maybe because I had 2 older brothers. I was never drawn in by young kids. I was never drawn in by people my age. So I went to Star Trek and the Invaders more than I went to the shows that had teenagers. So I was always drawn into the adult stuff. Although I do like you said, Alan, I still like Lost in Space. Although, man, Dr. Smith is a carrot. It's still hard to take. It's just
true. But I'll tell you something. No other show had a vocabulary anywhere equal to Dr. Smith's. I learned so many words that I would never have learned anywhere else.
You pusillanimous pipsqueak. Yes, it is indeed.
God.
And a lot of alliterative insults.
Yes.
All right, here's a question for the panel.
Yes.
Oops. They moved. I'm so sorry.
I know it happens.
Who do you think read their lines more dramatically, Batman or Captain Kirk?
So let me. This is fascinating to me because, I definitely feel like both William Shatner and Adam West are 2 guys who in some ways are overhyped because of the things that they've done, and also underappreciated because of the work that they do. Both are Shakespearean actors. Both are incredible. Both took characters and made them larger than life, and are still to this day, whenever somebody plays Kirk or whenever somebody plays Batman, you compare them to those 2 gentlemen. So, but interestingly enough, I found this fascinating that in 1963, there was a pilot for a show called Alexander the Great, which features William Shatner as Alexander and Adam West as Cleander. And if that show had been greenlit, we would have never.
Yeah. Well, don't say never.
We would have been deprived of 2 iconic performances.
That's only if that show had survived its first season or even been canceled 5 episodes in. You never know. We still might have gotten our 2 shows.
We might not have any podcasts now.
It was the only thing that either of them had done. That's the only thing that they'd done together before they got successful. And oddly enough, the only thing they've done after they were hugely successful was they both provided voices for a Batman 66 animated show, animated movie in which Two-Face is introduced finally.
Oh yeah.
And William Shatner does the voice of Two-Face. So I find, but I do, I understand and recognize that both of the actors are not perfect gentlemen by any means, but I grew up with them. They were my heroes. At least they portrayed my heroes. And I love what they brought to the table because they were perfect for what they were doing. But they, we're talking about small screen stuff, right? Like this is all TV, right? Small screen. So the bigger the actors, whether it's Adam West, whether it's William Shatner, whether it's Don Adams, whether it's Robert Vaughn, or like you name like all these actors that are successful, especially during this time of television, they all make these things larger than life.
Mhm.
And they sort of break out of the TV, and I appreciate all of them. And sure, they're not perfect for every single role out there. They don't get Oscars, but I think what they do is incredible.
But at the same time, a lot of what's happening, it might be fading away a little bit in 1966. And certainly British television draws far more from this tradition than American television does. But a lot of these people come from live theater.
Mm-hmm.
They are stage actors who are making the transition onto television.
True.
And the whole British television tradition evolves directly from live theater. The earliest British television productions were live plays with cameras pointed at them.
That's a good point.
And that's also the case with American television, but not nearly as much as it is with British. So there is some theatricality in 50s and 60s television shows that you don't get in the 70s and beyond because of that.
You're right about the British television shows, Alan, because I instantly started thinking of Upstairs, Downstairs, and I, Claudius, and all these things like that came from Britain. Brideshead Revisited, the first, all these kind of things like that. I think one of the things that I love, and I think we're all on the same page here, I absolutely adore animation and cartoons. And I always have my whole life. I still love cartoons. And 1966 had two cartoons that to some people are kind of obscure that I just absolutely adore. One of them is The Mighty Heroes. I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
Do you remember that, Charles, by any chance?
I don't.
Oh,
The
man.
Mighty Heroes was the one with the really, really goofy heroes that always end up crashing each other. One of them was Strongman, Rope Man, Diaper Man, Tornado Man. They were really, really goofy. And every episode, they when they went to go save the day, they basically literally crashed into each other almost every episode. And then they solved it at the end. They were just a bunch of ne'er-do-wells. And one of them, and I never figured it out, it was a baby in a crib. And when the call went out for the Mighty Heroes, somehow there'd be like pictures of the Statue of Liberty and the Star-Spangled Banner in the sky. And like the baby would literally, he'd be sucking on his bottle, and he'd put on a cape, and he had a super bottle that could shoot like super milk streams. It was insane. And one of them was a sailor who turned into a rope man. It was really good and really funny. I think Ralph Bakshi had a hand in that, if that tells you anything, I think. And the other one that I absolutely adore from that time, what was the other one I was just mentioned? It was The Mighty Heroes, and gosh, there was one more. Oh, my goodness. Do y'all remember the Marvel superheroes?
Oh, yeah.
The Marvel superheroes is the one that looks like they literally just lifted panels off the comic book and they tried to animate it, but they don't really move. It's like that guy you talked about, Charles, where his mouth only moves. Crash
Space
somebody?
Angel?
Space Angel. Yeah. And that's what these are. They literally looks like they take panels. Like when Captain America is moving, you just see the still figure dragged across the screen. Yeah. And there was the Avengers, Captain America, the Incredible Hulk, Iron Man, Thor, and they were great. They're kind of camp, but they are phenomenal, and I love them. And they're so popular now that every time somebody puts them on YouTube, Marvel, after they start creating MCU, Marvel pulls them down. And you can't even find DVDs or videotapes of them yet because Marvel's kind of controlling them.
Yeah, right. we get Spider-Man finally the year after in '67. The animated Spider-Man series, which I love. So.
Yeah, and there was a New Adventures of Superman cartoon that debuted that year. For those who remember, it was Superman, Superman. Came out that year.
Well, here's a comment from Tony Bowers. And Tony says, as someone who attended Monsterama over the weekend, which several of us did as well, it should be said that the 2026 was also the 60th anniversary of Dark Shadows.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
Which was another one that started off for black and white and pretty serious and not really, it didn't double down on the supernatural right away. I think the supernatural came like 2 or 3 years into it or something. And then all of a sudden it just ran wild with it.
Well, I think it's quicker than 2 or 3 years because so many episodes came out in a week. Right. So like, I think like the timetable of Dark Shadows is like accelerated from what you think of as a typical TV. It's like episode 200 something. You get Barnabas Collins come in, but it was actually relatively early in its run.
Mm-hmm.
But Dark Shadows is a show that, I mean, it kind of like Doctor Who, where I would stumble across random episodes and never really could figure out what was going on. In Dark Shadows, they were always lingering around in a graveyard. In Doctor Who, it was Tom Baker wandering down a corridor for half an hour. I didn't really get it when I was young, but like I liked the vibe, right? So I would hang out for like, this is weird and I like it. you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's funny you say that, Charles, because this is weird and somewhat unusual. Dark Shadows is a show I never got into.
Okay.
And I remember what you said. And I'm the last guy who ever calls something slow. But I remember as a kid when I would turn by it, like you said, it just didn't pull me in. And trust me, I was watching everything. I had already seen Night of the Living Dead when I was 4 years old. So I had seen stuff, but for some reason it never pulled me in. So to this day, I don't know very much about Dark Shadows to this day.
Wow.
I've seen things.
I missed out on Dark Shadows, and I've never got a chance. I've never really taken the time to go back on it. But I will say that
not just me.
And I do blame my love for comics as well as the Batman 66 show for my and Doctor Who too for my love of cliffhangers. Right, I love cliffhangers in stories, and I love and you know. Not only was Batman on throughout the 60s, but it was on when it was on twice a week.
Yes.
Like it was on Wednesdays and Thursdays. So the first part was on Wednesday, and they got into a situation and you didn't know how that was going to end until the next day. And I don't know of any other show that had ever done that before. And it was pretty radical. It only lasted 2 seasons to do that. The third season, they dispersed to that. It was only on once a week. And they dispersed with all the, cliffhangers like that. Which was unfortunate because I really, really I enjoy a good cliffhanger to this day.
Me too.
When people complain about seasons ending on a cliffhanger, I'm like, no, that's what I want. That's like, I love that feeling of, oh my God, what's next?
Right.
Mike, decades later after that, there was a short-lived TV series called Cliffhanger. I don't know if you remember that. Yeah,
I do kind of. I haven't seen it, but I do remember.
Yeah, it was kind of in that adventure vein where every week it was a cliffhanger. That was the whole point of it.
But
that's kind of awesome.
I also got addicted during the later 70s and 80s to soap operas because they were every scene was a cliffhanger.
Yes. My mom,
even though I didn't watch Dark Shadows, I found myself watching shows like General Hospital, especially since General Hospital in the 80s got really fantastic. That's why I started introducing fantastic stuff. So every scene was a cliffhanger, and I was like, I love this kind of story.
That's why I started off with the Days of Our Life, because my mom used to, what she'd say back then, my mom used to watch her stories as she worked when I was home. So it was the Doctors, it was Another World, it was those shows like that. And so like you, I was also watching soap operas.
Veronica recently bought me the big coffin-shaped collection of all 2,000 something episodes of Dark Shadows.
Holy smokes!
Wow!
I haven't dived into it yet because it's a little bit of a daunting commitment.
That's a commitment. Yeah.
But I am interested to do so because I've only ever watched random episodes of Dark Shadows or a string of them here and there.
I've seen the movies. I've seen the movies that they compiled they compressed 2 years of storyline into an hour and a half.
Right. Yeah. You guys were talking about the transition, especially, we were talking about toward the latter half of this decade, the transition. What I found very interesting is the shows that ended in 1960 year.
Okay.
Mr. Ed, the Talking Horse, the Donna Reed Show, Ben Casey, McHale's Navy, the Wackiest Ship in the Army, the Patty Duke Show, the Dick Van Dyke Show, Ozzie and Harriet, My Favorite Martian. Those shows were absolute staples of a certain type of show back in the day. They all ended in 66.
But those shows all feel very old-fashioned compared to some of the shows we're talking about, Dave.
Right. Exactly. So their time was going away. Yeah, they all ended that year in 66, and the transition was starting slowly.
That's super interesting because we were talking about Dick Van Dyke Show versus That Girl. I did not realize that it had ended the same year, it was this previous season was when it ended. So it's literally in the going into the summer, Dick Van Dyke, coming into the fall, that girl.
Right.
What a difference.
Yeah, and Charles, you're right. Even if you don't know anything about the history, you can just look at some of those shows. They look old. They feel old-fashioned. You're right in every way.
Yeah, my favorite Martian butting up against Star Trek is that's a huge shift.
Right,
you know?
right. And also, this is a slightly different vein, but talking about sort of the holdover that we get a little bit of that, like from sort of not really old fashioned, but there's still a lot of Westerns that are going on in 1966. And Westerns were big television back in the day. And you're still seeing a good number of those in 1966.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's like unheard of now.
Gunsmoke and Rawhide and are still going strong. And we don't have time to list all the Westerns.
right.
Like anything that we're not mentioning is a Western. That's right now. It's filled by a Western because those were really popular. But two other shows that ended in 66 were two of my favorites too, which was Addams Family and the Munsters. They both started in 64 and only had like a couple seasons. And I'm more of an Addams Family man, but I appreciate the Munsters as well. I've never been a like versus kind of guy, so I appreciate both. But I do sort of lean more towards the Addams Family. But yeah, it's kind of bummer that those just lasted only a couple years as well.
Yeah, but do you think it's better they didn't make that jump into color and into what potentially more increased pop art and camp that sort of followed after they went off the air?
I mean, both of them were comedies, so they could have probably, and I think Munsters probably could have done it a little bit, sustained itself better maybe than the Addams Family, because the Addams Family look had that. I mean, it was inspired by a black and white comic, right? So it probably could have, but yeah, obviously. It is interesting because, when you switch to color, then all of a sudden you've got a lot of things that are going to be a little bit more prevalent and harder to convince people of. And, or harder to take seriously. I think maybe that's one of the reasons why, again, Lost in Space leaned more into camp, because when they went to color, it was like, well, we can't hide the fact that this looks like, like it looks.
But something like the Munsters, it was so rooted in like old Universal monsters.
Yes.
And I think you'd lose something going to color with that show.
I agree. Both
and you did as they tried to remake it. But I'm sorry, go ahead, Alan.
Right. Both that and Addams Family had a horror basis.
Right.
And I think that black and white works for that. And I don't know how they would have transitioned into color. It would have been very jarring, I think.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, because they had a huge problem with Herman's skin color. It looked like, in the way that stuff works, his skin looked completely different, like purple or something with actual color.
Yeah, you're able to cheat a lot with black and white. Like you can do things to make things look a little bit differently. So they would have accounted for that. But I don't know. It's an interesting idea. Yeah, because the Universal monsters were still a big thing in the 60s because we hadn't got the Hammer remakes quite yet. That happens in the 60s. So once that happens, then all of a sudden people can see Dracula and Frankenstein and all those things in color with new versions. And but yeah, that's still a different kind of thing.
Well, you also had horror hosts that were keeping that old, like reintroducing a new generation to those old movies.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm gonna grab a couple of comments real quick. Texas Magnolia says, it's true what is said about Gen X. We were left on our own during the day and sometimes in the evening. This is why I watched so much TV and caught a lot of reruns of shows such as Monkees and Batman. And that really mirrors a lot of what I went through in the 80s and 90s watching these shows. And I wasn't around like you guys were, sort of came along in the 60s. I came around in 1980, but this stuff was all in like it was the rerun era, right? When I was growing up. So this stuff was all over TV when I was a kid.
Right.
And it was on like 5 times a week. So I mean, what most people watch, like, most people would watch these shows that we're talking about, like Star Trek and everything, like Batman, within a span of 2 or 3 years when it was originally on. But we saw like the whole season, like every year, like we could the whole season compact in like a few months. And then it would start over again. And so we'd see the same episodes over and over and over and over again. And it was implanted in our DNA.
Yeah. And you never got tired of them.
No.
All right. Here's a comment from Robert Thomason in a show that we've not mentioned yet. What about Mission Impossible? That was a
Yes.
1966 news show.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That
And
was
really
on
a
my
sister
list
show
of-
of Star Trek because it was a Desilu production.
Right.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, it's hard to argue that that's not one of the other bigger shows that happened in '66 because
Yeah, I think-
look at the legacy. I mean, it's
Right.
it's still a huge multi-million-dollar franchise now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Somebody else earlier up
Mhm.
made a comment about TV theme songs
Yes, I
being
saw
so
that.
important in this era. And Mission Impossible has
Oh,
one of
man.
the greatest theme
Yes.
songs ever written.
Absolutely.
And I'm certain that is my very first exposure to an asymmetric time signature being in 5/4. And it sounds, those things sound so natural to me because I grew up on Mission Impossible,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, that's a great show.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you really had like the just really well orchestrated and conducted theme songs, but then you also had the ones that would tell you what you're about to watch before you watch it,
Mhm.
but in a rhyming way. Both were very popular in the 60s. You got quite a lot of both of them.
just sit right back and you hear
That's
a tale.
right.
Tale
I
of a
love it.
tiny ship.
Yep. There is a whole generation of TV theme songs that
Yes.
you don't even have to have a pilot episode for because the theme song tells you the setup every week.
Yeah.
It tells you where the story began and who the characters are. And Puff and Stuff did it, and
Yes.
a whole bunch of them.
Right.
Yeah. And those of us a certain age and who grew up on these shows, to this day, when I watch a TV show that has a really quick intro, it still feels somewhat weird to me because in my head, I'm still used to the theme songs. Whether it's
Sure.
music, like Hogan's Heroes with the music and the scenes, or the people telling you the story, that's still kind of my natural state. So it's still weird to me when you have TV shows that like have 10 seconds and then the show starts.
I know. Okay,
It
here's
is.
some trip. Oh, go ahead.
I was just about to say real quick.
Yeah.
It is almost it's so difficult to for people like my nephew's age or younger folks to understand the way things worked and that like television was completely different. Every show had to be standalone because there was no guarantee that anybody had watched the week before or would watch the week after or would ever see this ever again.
Yes.
Right.
And so every show, like Get Smart, every episode of Get Smart has to have like Maxwell has to say all his catchphrases, and they have to write that in every single episode because everybody's expecting him to say like all of his catchphrases.
Missed it
same
by
thing
that much.
Exactly. You have to say like, and loving it. Like you have to do like, and the same thing with Addams Family. You have to every episode, someone has to come into the house and it's the same thing where it's like, oh my God, look at all this weird stuff. And what have I walked into? And with Batman, you have to go down the poles and go in the Batmobile and go down the road and go into Gotham and stuff. Like everything has to be done over and over again, which is wonderful when you're growing up and you've got these shows that are standalone, but it makes them very difficult to binge, difficult to binge.
But also, you film that stuff one time and then you cut it into every episode. So it's also a cost saving thing. Here's a little trivia for you since we're talking about theme songs. As we know, the themes, and there were two different ones for Lost in Space, and much of the original incidental music was composed by John Williams, who,
Johnny.
At the time, Johnny. Here's the trivia. Gilligan's Island has a pilot episode that never aired and has an original theme song that is different from what we know as the theme song with different lyrics, and the music was composed by John Williams.
Wow.
And it's very Caribbean island kind of feel. It is not in any way resembles what we got on television.
Yeah, I just heard that last month, so I know exactly.
Really?
What you're talking about. Yeah, I was listening to a show about that.
Cool.
They had to change that theme song within a couple seasons because they had to account for the other two cast members, right?
And the rest.
Well, they should have given them names in the in the song all along, and the rest. That's
And the rest.
insulting.
Right. You know, Alan,
So
you
I
just-
like how that was changed to and the Professor and Mary Jane.
Professor and Marianne. Yeah. Alan, it's funny. You're talking about openings. One of the things I do appreciate, and it's still incredibly rare today, is a series where the opening changes every season. That's incredibly rare.
Oh, I know.
I think the best example of that is probably Babylon 5, where every season had a different opening. But Lost in Space for all 3 seasons had a different opening for all 3 seasons. The first part of the first season was a little different. I think the second was different, and the third was different. And I love that. And I think it was the third season when the music was much more kind of upbeat and they showed all the people. That was when they were in color. That was very rare back then because people didn't shoot openings and change things like that every year. That was incredibly rare. I can't remember many other shows that did it back then.
I think Mission Impossible, didn't they have a different like opening? Like the music was the same, but the opening's different because I think, if I'm not mistaken, weren't they previewing what was going to happen in the story?
Yeah,
So,
they were like what Battlestar Galactica, the new the revamped Battlestar Galactica
which
did.
Which kind of annoys me because it's like I'm here watching the show. I don't
know.
Like I don't want to see scenes from the thing I'm about to watch. Thank you.
Space 1999 is famous for that as well.
I Spy used to do that as well. Like this week.
Yeah.
I don't know. It kind of gets me hyped up. I don't mind it.
One of the things, Alan and Mike, you guys were talking about was the spy shows influence and stuff like that. And one of the things as a kid I loved being stuck in the house was the spy shows and the shows that took me on an adventure. For example, there was a show that debuted, I think in '66, it was called Run for Your Life, starring Ben Gazzara. And it was the show starts off, talk about telling the story. The show starts off showing like a teletype or typewriter typing, and it literally says 9 months to live. And basically, he's been diagnosed with a terminal illness. He has less than a year to live. And basically, he spends the whole show just having adventures every week. And he went places. He fights a bull. He drives a race car. And so all those, and I Spy, it's Bill Cosby. So, it's Bill Cosby. But I Spy was going somewhere every week. And those shows, those adventure type spy shows were great. I love those things.
And they genuinely filmed I Spy around the world.
Yeah.
Like they would spend weeks filming in different countries. And and that really comes across on screen.
It does. It does.
Okay. There's a comment from Robert Thomason that I'm disappointed that he corrected himself in the comment because the first time he did it, John Denver, the country singer, got the theme song for Gilligan's Island changed. But no, Bob Denver. Gilligan himself. Yes.
Yes.
Way to go, Bob.
I was just waiting to point that out.
For those old enough, Maynard G. Krebs.
Well, one show that
Dobie Gillis.
One show we've not talked a lot about on this episode is the Monkees.
The Monkey. I was just going to say the same thing. This is a Monkees show.
That's right. And I mean, there and the music explosion in the '60s had been permeating television for several years up to this point. But I think the Monkees was sort of the biggest expression of that up to that point, more so than like just like the Mosquitoes episode of Gilligan's Island. And
oh my gosh.
But where really television and the music industry really collided and benefited each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I mean, what do you guys like the Monkees?
Yeah,
I've heard of it. I don't know.
I'm sorry. What show?
Yeah, I always think of the Monkees in almost the same weird vein as Sigmund and the Sea Monster and Lidsville and shows like that because it was just so. Well, because it was just so out there. It was just really weird. I loved the Monkees. It was always like I didn't smoke weed, but it was always like you could smoke weed to watch the Monkees.
Increasingly as it went along, and the people making the show were doing the same. So you
and all the way up to them making a movie called Head.
Right.
Oh,
and
yes.
When you mentioned Sigmund and the Sea Monster, but really like Banana Splits was directly influenced by the Monkees.
Yes, it was.
Absolutely.
And, so when the Monkees went off the air, it left sort of a hole that was being tried. They were trying to fill that with the Archies, the Partridge Family, the Banana Splits, all sort of rushing to fill that Monkees void.
Yeah.
And Charles, you're talking about the Monkees, which is a good point because when I was looking at stuff, there was a thing about events that year. On June 5th of 1966, the Beatles made a taped appearance on Ed Sullivan in the U.S. And that's where they debuted their music videos for Rain and Paperback Writer. So you're right, that kind of music was, obviously permeating the world and things were changing. And the Monkees absolutely tapped into that. And then, of course, that led to everybody saying that, what's his face, Walter Koenig, with that mop of hair he had at one point in time.
Sure.
He was trying to look like one of the Monkees.
Yeah, Davy Jones.
Davy Jones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've had you guys on to join us on BATCHUMS to talk about some of the Batman episodes, because you can definitely see that there was an interest in getting 60s new bands to play and perform and interact with Batman. And so, with mixed success, as we've talked about, but
Right.
but I mean, there was definitely like a lot of the shows were trying to, I think it's interesting because as the 60s went on, and the culture started to, especially older and younger culture, started to really divide more and more.
Yes.
I think that TV was having a hard time trying to satisfy both.
Absolutely.
And trying to like bring in elements that would attract the kids, but also that that the adults wouldn't dismiss. So it was hard. I think it was harder and harder for, like, in the late 60s. It was because anytime you watch like shows trying to have like youth or hippies or whatever on it, it just looks ridiculous. Like they don't get it at all. And it's kind of embarrassing to watch now.
Of course.
As a Star Trek fan, I can attest to that.
Yes.
Yeah.
The way to Eden.
Right.
Yeah. And the same thing with Batman when they had Louis Lilac and his flower children on there. It was just like, what are we doing? What
well, Lost in Space did it too. They had the hippies dancing on the pool tables. Absolutely.
That was the one.
Yeah.
And Mike, I like what you're saying about how the divide was starting to take place between the old and the young, and then the World War II generation, the generation that was coming, the later, because there were some slight footsteps being taken into what would become like the civil rights era and things like that. For example, for those who know, Amos and Andy was a famous property, been around, radio and stuff. And it's basically a straight up stereotype of Black people. It's this and that, and they talk like that. Well, the sitcom was pulled in 1966, which had been around since the early 50s, because people started complaining, and I think Black people started finding our voices. So CBS actually pulled Amos and Andy during that time. And another step, even though, again, I hate to bring this guy up, I Spy was a big deal for Bill Cosby, a Black man. He won Emmys. Robert Culp didn't win Emmys. Bill Cosby won Emmys. Now, of course, Bill Cosby is an absolute pervert now, but it was very important that there was a Black man in a serious role back then. And then, of course, who was taking up that mantle? Star Trek. And then on and on on and on. So the first tentative steps into a change in American culture taking place.
And where does it lead us? The Mod Squad.
Oh, yes. There you go. Love it.
Yes.
Hey, we just finished watching, I think the next episode that we're reviewing, or no, the one that we just released is the final episode that Eartha Kitt did as Catwoman in the third season. And let me tell you, there's not a lot of times that Batman, I feel like, can be applauded for its progressive nature. And certainly when it's in its hiring of Cesar Romero, they had no idea that, he was closeted, but but I mean, looking back on it now, that's pretty cool. But Eartha Kitt, they knew what they were doing. They were replacing a very popular Julie Newmar with Eartha Kitt, and stations, they did get blowback where Southern stations were like, we're not going to show this, that kind of thing. And because Eartha Kitt wasn't just a woman of color, she was a very politically vocal woman of color. And that was quite a bold move. That unfortunately, she was only on 3 episodes in the 60s in that final season. But I got to tell you, man, she owns that role in a way 100%. That is, I just can't even imagine someone taking over for Julie Newmar and knocking a home run out, but she does. And unfortunately, because the way things were, the sort of sexual tension between Batman and Catwoman is gone. They can't play into that. But it's Eartha Kitt. I mean, she has sexual chemistry just walking on the screen.
Right. I like Julie Newmar a lot, but when I think feline, I think Eartha Kitt. When I think truly feline, the way she would roll her tongue or arms and stuff, she was so good.
But the way she would move,
She
was
so
very
good.
cat-like.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I mean, and Kit is in her name. Like she's
Right.
Right.
You know, if there was somebody born to play Catwoman,
Yeah.
it was Eartha Kitt. So
Yeah.
For my last comment on 66, this is so weird because this is going to take us all the way back to what we're talking about, which sometimes what feels like a bygone era, but it's a symbol of the past that still resonates for me hugely. 1966 was the debut of It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, and How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
Oh,
Nailed it.
I mean, my God, what more can you say?
Oh
Right.
man, Great Pumpkin is like
Yes.
one of my favorite pieces of television
Yes.
ever.
Yes, and that shows that sometimes certain I don't know if the word values is right. It's not. There's certain aspects of humanity that are eternal, and
Yeah.
those shows capture it. The Grinch
I
and
agree.
Charlie Brown capture it perfectly.
absolutely.
Yeah. Gosh.
Well, thank you
Wow.
guys for joining us for this. I really do appreciate it, and I think this has been a really great discussion of that year, and the shows that ended that year. Something I didn't even think about when I pitched this discussion. So thank
Yeah,
you guys for
I
bringing
didn't
that as
either.
Well,
Yeah. Next week, 1967.
Maybe we should save that for next calendar year.
that's right.
Yeah.
So,
This
Mike,
has
tell
been
folks
fun.
a little about the BATCHUMS podcast and where they can find more of it.
Well, the BATCHUMS podcast is available on YouTube as well as wherever you listen to fine podcasts. It's also on the ESO network. And myself and Drew have been painstakingly, no, there's no pain involved, going through each episode of the Batman 66 seasons. And we are on season 3. Boo-hoo. We're halfway through season 3. So we're almost done with the rest of it. So, but that'll take us into the end of the year. We've also got other things that we're doing that are 66 related and beyond after that. So please stay tuned on that. And also you can find me with another 60s, a show that started in the 60s, Earth Station Who, because we're still recording podcasts of that, as well as the Dragon Con Report and other fun stuff. So if you want to find out what I'm up to, just go to newlegendmike.com, and that's my link tree, and it tells you all about my books, my podcasts, and everything else.
Mm-hmm. And there's a bunch of episodes of BATCHUMS where you can find the Monkeying Around gang guest starring.
Absolutely. Yes.
talking
You are
about-
on a good handful of them, and those are fun. Those were a lot of fun.
Paul Over and the Raiders, Chad and Jeremy. Really, the 60s musical act showed up, so did we.
Leslie Gore.
Right.
That's right. All right, Keith, do you want to tell folks about the Earth Station Trek podcast and where they can find more of you specifically?
Yeah, we do a podcast every Thursday night at 8 p.m. We cover the current episode of whatever Star Trek happens to be showing at the time. And when we don't get new episodes of a Star Trek show, we talk about the Star Trek universe, old shows and so forth. That's at 8 p.m. on Thursday nights. And you can find me on the ESO network, primarily the ESO Facebook group.
All right. And Alan, do you want to add anything to that? And also, where can people find more of you?
Well, I do another podcast called Modern Musicology, which can be found on things like Apple and Spotify and Amazon and iHeartRadio and iTunes and all those places. And we talk about music subjects from the 60s, the 70s, 80s, 90s, that kind of thing. And so we have done shows on TV, theme songs. We have done all kinds of stuff. We've interviewed lots of big names in the music industry, lots of authors who write about big names in the music industry. And then we just do fun episodes sometimes. Every once in a while, we just have a good time. And you can find all that nonsense at cosmiccreative.com, KOZMIC creative.com. You'll find all my books there and my other podcasts as well.
Yeah. And as always, you can find Veronica and I at feltnerdy.com or Felt Nerdy across social media, or Felt Nerdy and Dirty, if you're brave, across social media or on YouTube. And then, tomorrow night, we'll be talking about the first black and white noir episode of Star Trek, which is debuting tomorrow. So join us at 8 o'clock on Thursday for Earth Station Trek. And Monkeying Around will be back next week, but we'll be at a special time. We'll be on at 9 o'clock next week. And we're going to be joined by Charles Rosenet and several other folks to talk about the Monkees comic book, which will be debuting soon.
Awesome.
So we've got some folks from different time zones. So we're going to be 1 hour later than typical. You can find us at 9 p.m. Eastern next Wednesday. And I'm going to do my best to do this justice, but thanks for monkeying around.
Thanks, everybody.